starting on Monday next week to harmonize the party mobilization tours. Today, NUP leader Robert Chagulanyi Sentamu and his supporters embarked on a journey to hold their consultative and mobilization meeting in Palisa district, but the group was intercepted and blocked at Seziwa Bridge. On Wednesday, NUP's mobilization rally in Kamuli was dispersed by police and several party members were arrested. Addressing journalists at the party headquarters in Makere Kavule, Chagulanyi condemned the decision by security agencies to block the party mobilization activities. He, however, says a group of party leaders will on Monday meet the police leadership to iron out their issues.
There were some ridiculous demands. Among them were that we don't hold public rallies and processions. But as you all know, other groups are having public rallies, they're having processions. What we don't understand, what we don't agree with are the double standards. We've been asked to meet them on Monday to discuss it. And we've agreed that on Monday, a group of our leaders will go to the police headquarters and engage the police and tell them the truth that we are telling you now, that they are operating on double standards. They are reduced to playing politics, and that is embarrassing them. They are spoiling the name of the police force, and the double standard should stop.
Police have arrested another suspect in connection to the aggravated robbery incident involving Thompson Mugisha, which was captured on CCTV along Benchwanka Street. The suspect, identified as Derek Mugisa, commonly known as Musota, was arrested today around Nachibobo Channel in the city center. Mugisa joins two other suspects already in custody, Peter Senyonjo, also known as Kachima, and Nureyama, also known as Tanzania. In a statement, Kampala Metropolitan Deputy Police spokesperson Luka Xtra says the suspects have admitted to acting under the command of another individual whom efforts are intensifying to bring to justice. Xtra says the suspects will be processed and presented in court as soon as investigations are complete. The Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Thomas Taiwa, calls for a strategic approach to the land tenure and management question in the country as a means to facilitate food safety and climate change adaptation. This follows reports of increasing land conflicts that have frustrated meaningful agriculture and created food insecurity in communities. Taiwa's statement was presented by Chigulu South Member of Parliament, Milton Mooma, at the ongoing National Symposium on Land Management in Uganda held at Parliament.
Climate change knows no borders and respects no boundaries. Its effects are felt by all, but its burden is often disproportionately borne by the most vulnerable among us. In Uganda, rural communities, smallholder farmers, and marginalized groups, including women, are particularly susceptible to the adverse impacts of climate change. In the face of these challenges, securing land rights emerges as fundamental pillar of climate change, adaptation, and sustainable food systems. The assurance that nobody will interfere with their land rights empowers farmers and other land users to invest in sustainable land management practices.
The chairperson of the Parliamentary Land Forum, Christine Kaya Nachimwero, noted the need to review land tenure policies to meet the current challenges.
We have a number of approved practices to help our farmers go through climate change, but all the adaptation practices on land. So we are wondering, if somebody doesn't have security on land, then how will the approved practices on climate change adaptation take place? That is why we are seated here to deliberate on some of those issues. What will happen if people don't have security? So we are saying that if land tenure is absent, then the issues of climate change management are going to be very difficult, and eventually Uganda shall have serious food insecurity.
Bank of Uganda conveys to the financial sector the need to continue strengthening their risk management systems to mitigate the risks that come with digital technology channels, according to the Director of Commercial Banking, Hannington Waswa. As the digital technologies continue to advance, it's important for the financial industry to properly manage these risks. Waswa notes that the Bank of Uganda has continued to implement regulatory reforms geared towards strengthening risk management systems in financial institutions, this while opening the new NCBA Bank branch in Namamve Industrial Business Park.
Key among the recent reforms include issuance of the revised corporate governance guidelines, enhancing the vetting criteria for appointment of officers of senior management positions, and increase in the minimum data capture requirements to further strengthen financial institutions' resilience to shocks. The opening of the new branch demonstrates the bank's aspiration to build a sustainable business of exploiting synergies across the business value chain of the corporate sector. This will also strategically position the bank to better provide banking services conveniently, especially to the existing and prospective customers within this complex and the neighboring areas.
Meanwhile, NCBA Bank CEO Mark Muyobo says the branch targets the inadequately served community with only one commercial bank currently operating within the park.
So all the products that the commercial banks actually provide, we provide them here. One of them is asset finance. We are the home of asset finance in the region. And the beauty about asset finance is that one of the key areas of concern is lack of security. Asset finance is almost self-securing. Trade solutions, most of the importers of raw materials would actually want trade solutions, so we are able to provide those trade solutions. We also able to provide investment solutions.
Next is Spectrum Xtra with Kenneth Anderson Lukwago.
That was the news on Radio 1. Brought to you by KCB Bank Uganda. Chiguse with the KCB unsecured salary loan of up to 250 million shillings with a repayment period of 84 months. KCB Bank Uganda. For people, for better.
Radio 1, FM 90.
Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. An extra hour of analysis and discussion of the topical issues of the week. Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1, FM 90.
Well, it's a Friday, the 24th of May, 2024, and this is Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing the major events of the week. My name is Kenneth Lukwagandason, your host, and today I have a panel of four. The Honorable Ambassador Simon Mulongo, governance and security expert, who did represent Bubulo East in Parliament, and he also served as the deputy head of the African Union Mission in Somalia, joins us this evening. Good evening, and thank you very much.
Good evening so much, our dear listeners, and thank you for having time with my colleagues, except for Comrade Dothian, with whom we have spent some time without meeting.
I'm going to charge you, what will we call it, a meeting fee, or
well,
how should we call it?
As long as it's within a public order.
All right. Mr. Joseph Ochieno, as already introduced by the Honorable Simon Mulongo, member of the Uganda People's Congress, Pan-Africanist, pundit on global governance and development matters. Good evening, Mr. Joseph Ochieno, and thank you very much for joining us again.
Thank you for giving me the space. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to meet with my long-lost brother, Simon, and, of course, my fantastic, beautiful neighbor, and whose name you're going to disclose. And yes, it's a Friday evening, and it's always a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
She's our neighbor. Miss Perry Aritua, Executive Director of Women Democracy Network, Uganda chapter, lawyer and pundit on governance and human rights matters, seasoned election observer. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Perry.
You've added that. Anyway, good evening, listeners and viewers, and my fellow panelists.
Are you not a seasoned election observer? The last time I saw you doing some election observation, you actually arrested. Why you arrested? You were trying to conduct an activity which the police said was illegal.
It was actually not the police.
Running a parallel tally center.
Some of us are very law-abiding, and our training ensures that we do so. We had the accreditation signed by the deputy, I think she's the deputy EC chair.
You don't know who accredits you.
No, it's a deputy EC chair, signed by her. We are accredited in August 2020, I think. So we do not work outside the law.
So what was the scene then?
Well, there
was no scene.
You were accredited to move around the country to see how elections were going on, but you were busy tallying
No,
the
we don't
results?
tally.
Planning to announce your own
Kenneth,
president?
we are law-abiding citizens. Very law-abiding. That's why there was no judge.
But it's also true you have observed elections in other
a
countries,
number of countries
across
Uganda.
Africa and Uganda. Thank you very much for joining us. We expect a fourth panelist. When he gets here, I will introduce him. Well, gentlemen and ladies, today we'll be looking at the standoff between NUP and the police. We know very well for the second day running, the police has blocked the NUP leadership from conducting what they call their legitimate party activities. They were supposed to be in Kamoli yesterday. They were blocked. Today they were supposed to be in Palisa. They were cut off from Seziwa bridge where the police authorities were on the ground, including the RPC, Jonathan Musinguzi, told them that they could not proceed because they needed to get guidance from the IGP back in Kampala. So the meeting, which was planned for Palisa, could not take off. So they are back in Kampala, and from the latest, they are supposed to have a meeting with the police on Monday. There's a discussion around this issue in terms of the rights to hold public assemblies, the rights to conduct their own activities, although the police also saying they need to do so within the confines of the law. Some of the guidelines that the police insists was issued to NUP includes not carrying out processions, not carrying out public rallies. They're supposed to do what they call town hall meetings. They're also supposed to inform the police about the number of people expected to attend those meetings. They must also ensure that there's availability of security. They are also supposed to put in place measures that are described as health measures in order to conduct those meetings. NUP President Robert Chagulanyi Sentam says all this information was provided to the police, and he's saying the police is acting with double standards and that they need to allow them to conduct their activities just like others are being allowed to do so. But the police says NUP has remained unruly while the others who have been cleared to carry out their activities are working within the law. We'll be looking at that issue. We know there is a planned censure of commissioners of parliament that is going on with the collection of signatures. This exercise is spearheaded by the Honorable Theodore Sechkubo of Lwemiaga County, together with other MPs, including Joseph Seungu of Kalungu West, Patrick Oshabe Samba of Kasanda North, Sarah Opendi of Tororo District, and Yok Alion, who is from Aringa South. By yesterday, they had collected 30 signatures out of the 177 that are needed to actually ensure that their motion is taken to the House for discussion. Will this actually see the light of day? The main issue here, they are saying that they want to remove these commissioners from Parliament because of the famous service award, the money they allocated apparently to themselves, 1.7 billion shillings, which was shared among them. The commissioners being targeted: Esther Foyochan, Zombo County, Zombo District Woman MP, Prosi Akampurira, Rubanda District Woman MP, Solomon Silwanyi, Bukoli Central MP, and Matthias Impuga Nsamba, Nyendo Mukungwe MP. We'll have a discussion around that. But also there's an emerging story around the region, implications of Kenya becoming a honorary member of NATO. Now, the recent visit by Kenyan President William Ruto to Washington has, among other things, culminated into a deal that solidifies Kenya's position as a honorary NATO ally. Now, some people are already speculating that this has a significant implication for regional security, including counterterrorism and balance of power in the region. Some people are even suggesting that this is part of the wider global dynamics, which involves Russia, China, and the US. So we'll also be looking at that particular issue. Well, my fourth guest is also here, Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma, a researcher and also a political economist. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, I'll begin with Mr. Cheno. On this issue of the standoff between NUP and the police, the exchanges, you followed them, what has been happening. We know that the ban against NUP activities started last year, and the police seem to suggest that it's still on. But NUP says they need to continue operating as a registered political party, and it's within their right. So they have a meeting on Monday.
I noticed with interest that the police on this occasion has attempted to do a detailed response. an explanation of sorts. Rather tempting, but I find it still extraordinary that in the statement they suggest that NUP should not hold a rally. I don't know what it is that political parties ought to do other than to hold public rallies, if they so wish. I am a product of campaigns for restoration of multi-party democracy in this country. And while we're doing this for over 20 years, one of the fundamentals was basically that political parties needed to be free to operate their branch offices. They needed to hold public rallies. They needed to organize and participate in elections. And they needed to therefore canvass for votes and express their views and opinions at any time. The idea that the police has got to define what political parties should do, should not do within the law, and that therefore technically is illegal for a political party to hold a rally, it does not make sense to me. There's this new things that has emerged, and maybe political parties have also fallen into trap that we are doing consultation. Some of these are very strange concepts. The political parties operate from day to day. They engage their members. If we want to organize a rally, we organize a rally. If we want to do fundraising, we do a fundraising.
I think that is within the line of the arrangement for elections. You're only allowed to carry out open campaigns during the period designated for campaigns.
Then the NRA law needs to be changed very urgently, very fundamentally. I do not know, and good enough, my brother Surukuma is here with me in terms of experience, and so is very, and indeed actually this is a rich panel, including my good brother Simon. We have all of us are people who've traveled around the world and have engaged in political activities. The idea that in a particular country called Uganda under NRA for 40 years, and we forced them to open a political space, and we did so through the courts. That there is a season when you can smile, there's a season when you go to put on raid, there's a season when you hold a procession. It's not even cheeky, isn't it? That the last point I was going to make now, let me make it first, that there is also this thing called procession. But the commander of Mr. Museveni's army, who's Museveni's son, had a procession in the streets of Kampala. What is that? What is that? Isn't that a procession? So no, I think it's extremely unfortunate. And I say these things very seriously and also very sadly, that for me, who continues to engage, particularly with the younger people in this country, Simon, that we genuinely want a population of people in their 20s and 30s and particularly 40s, younger than myself, to be people who are able to compete, converse, and have chats in political spaces across the political divides, and that superiority of opinion, supremacy of opinion and thoughts and ideals are what wins the day. And so therefore political parties that are sufficiently organized, political parties that sufficiently engage the citizens and prick their emotions enough to persuade the majority of people, that becomes the majority political party. I think NUP as a recent younger political party, if I was actually advising NRM, there's no reason why we don't let Ugandans get to know who these people are and what they're made of, and in any case, part of the nuances around this letter is almost as if you're destined to, you're organizing some cheeky thing. I know Museveni came from the bush, and so he's very conscious about politics of possible disorganization of the state system, because he's an expert in that. But the security services, the police, and by that I advised the police at senior levels, at the highest level, that as an agency whose job it is, amongst others, the detection and prevention of crime, if there is a potential political crime to be committed, in this case by NUP, only the intelligence detectors need to do, detect, manage it, and at the end of the day, wait for them to commit, unless it's actually a bomb anyway. If they do so, go ahead and arraign them in the courts.
All right.
I think in this country, if NRA did that 3 times, 3 incidents with the NUP guys, NUP would lose popularity, and Mr. Museveni would regain whatever else they may have lost.
All right.
I think they're being extremely unfair to these guys.
All right, we'll be coming back to you. Let's hear from Perry. Your experience with this. This is not the first time we're seeing this kind of things happening. Like Joseph Fauciano suggested, that it seems there's a season for everything here in Uganda politically. One time you can do rallies, one time you can do political activity. It seems that the only time political parties are allowed to do what they're supposed to do, according to what they are saying, the NUP people, is when the schedule for elections is actually out.
And that should not be, because one of the roles of parties is to, apart from educating citizens, recruiting, ensuring that they have candidates for the next election, they only do that if they're able to organize. Part of it is ensuring their structures are functional, being in touch with the grassroots to know what is going on, what the issues are. This should be continuous. The important thing is, as they do this, they must abide, they must not infringe on the rights of others. Now, there are a few caveats when it comes to, the right to assembly and the right to assembly. Basically, at times you can be restricted if there's an issue of health, or if you may infringe on other people's rights. Like in a busy area where people are having shops, you may not be allowed to organize an assembly there. But ideally, their rights should not be controlled. That's what I want to say. They should not be controlled. They should just be regulated. Because if you control, then you make the citizens lose an opportunity to know what their message is, what they have for this country, basically. Because I know that in the last election, many young people were struggling about the message. So this season is actually ripe for all political parties to organize, to tell citizens why we should choose A and not B. It should not be during elections. Of course, there are certain specific regulations that the EC, the Electoral Commission, will issue, and it will regulate the campaign period. But right now, parties should actually be organizing, recruiting, identifying, people who can join them, training people who can be leaders. So they need to be able to do that. And you see, Uganda is part of a global village. And that's why when we are speaking, at times we also pick lessons from other countries. We are party to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which we have replicated in our constitution. That's why Article 29 elaborates most of these rights and freedoms, assembly, association, expression. So it's critical. And for me, it is even better for the citizens to know these parties earlier than when we go into an election. Because during an election, the market is so saturated. At times it's difficult to know what they are saying, what they're offering this country if they are to take over leadership. So for me, I think the important thing is to ensure that all parties are treated the same, meaning because I know UPC is in Kitco, and from the pictures I saw a procession, the pictures in the public arena. So one of the things that I think the police needs to continue to do is to show the public that they're applying the law equally.
All right. One of the arguments that has been put up across on the issue of procession, especially on the Ginger Highway, is the fact that that is a very important road in terms of traffic that comes from the border, bringing in goods, and also bringing in travelers. And when you see the population, the number of people that Bobby Wine and the team are pulling from these different towns that are along those roads, business comes to a standstill.
And that's why,
should he be doing those processions on such a key road?
That's why I said that one of the caveats to the freedom of assembly is if the police knows that it will affect public order. That's why at times they may say,
in your opinion, doesn't it?
No, of course it does. If you are going to organize and people are not able to move on the road. But if, for instance, you're going to your venue, and the venue is such that cars are not stopped, then, so the police makes a decision based on how busy that area is, but they do not stop you from going to your venue. What they do is to ensure that you're able to reach the venue and organize and speak to the population. That's why even within the law, rights cannot be absolute, because you have to also be responsible for other people. Right. Those who are using the highway need to be able to use the highway. So at times police may come in to say, look, on this busy road, it's like City Square. You cannot have a rally at the City Square currently because it's a very busy area. So they regulate, but in regulation, they must not deter. Because when you deter, then you make it difficult for the citizens to know who these parties are, who they are, what their message is. So that's really what I would like to say on this issue.
Right. Let me come to you. You want to jump in or
just 30 seconds. No, just to say this thing about even using Ginger Road. If we want to be part of a global citizenry and a particular democracy, I actually do not see why, and this UPC government would do, that you're on Ginger Road and you block Ginger Road exceptionally, even if it's for 1 hour, purposefully, as citizens exercising their rights, and the necessity to lead them to Color Airstrip, it would happen. Why? Look at what's happening around the world, around the Palestinian rights. I'm happy.
Kampala to Kamoli, for instance.
Oh, no, of course, that is possibly technical and reasonable. That's technical and reasonable. But I'm simply saying that maybe a group of people blocking part of Ginger Road and police redirect traffic. The police, the country belongs to the citizens. So if it is the case that at a particular time, NRM people want to celebrate something particular and they want to go to Nambole and it will require maybe 500,000 people and they're able to mobilize them, we should be able to create that space and do it for them. Likewise, if it's going to be NUP, see what's happening around the Palestinian cause. I participated in the campaigns around the anti-apartheid thing, the release Nelson Mandela. We blocked London. The global capital city. Business had to live with it. That's the reality of these things. There's no reason why we don't bring this thing to Kampala. And quickly, the City Square thing, Perry, is not about the location of it. Museveni blocked City Square because he was fearing leading to whatever happened in 1979. I would reopen City Square again symbolically. It is simply the number of people and whether or not you're able to manage them within reason. And normally, when you're doing these things, I was again part of these other things, police throws back the burden of responsibility to organizers. And many times, UK police would say, Joseph, how many people do you expect? And you tell them roughly the numbers, and then you have a negotiation, a conversation with them. At the end of the day, the burden of responsibility lies again with me to make sure that our people do these things within reason, as Perry says. And if you cross the line, the law deals with you.
Right, Perry, allow you to conclude.
The key word is redirect, because you must not make other people not be able to go about their business. For me, that is key, that, these freedoms continue to be enjoyed, but others don't get affected by your right to assemble and to really express yourself.
Well, Spectrum Xtra on Radio 1 FM 90. We're going to go for a break now. When we return, we'll hear from Ambassador Simon Mulongo, but also from Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma, as we continue reflecting on this issue. At Seziwa, where they were blocked from, the RPC there, Jonathan Musinguzi, told them, because he was there with the DPC, and the message to NUP leaders was that they had detected that they were planning to do something different from what they had actually officially told the police. So they could not proceed. They had to go back to Kampala and find out. So is it possible for us to have a situation where when police detect something, maybe their right to advise? Is the police being partisan like NUP is suggesting? Can we have a discussion there? Can we have a situation where the opposition and the police can agree? There's a meeting on Monday on these guidelines and how NUP should conduct its activities. Let's go for a break now. When we return, Spectrum Xtra will continue.
Spectrum Xtra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
You can't come to the show.
Spectrum Xtra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Xtra live on Radio 1 FM 90. Review of the major events of the week. The panel this evening focusing on the standoff between the NUP and the police over their planned activities. We'll be looking at the planned seizure of commissioners, but also the implications of Kenya becoming a honorary member of NATO under the ongoing discussion as part of the visit of the Kenyan president to Washington this particular week. My panel, Ms. Perry Aritu, Executive Director at Women Democracy Network, Uganda Chapter, Mr. Joseph Ocheno, member of the Uganda People's Congress, Pan-Africanist. We also have Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma, researcher and political economist. Also in studio, Ambassador Simon Mulongo, governance and security expert. who once represented Bobulo East in Parliament and served as a deputy head of the African Union Mission in Somalia. I'll come to you, Ambassador Simon Mlongo. What's your reading on this issue, where we are at the moment between the NUP and the police?
Thank you so much. I hope you accord us time with Dr. The same time until the next break, like you did to the colleagues.
We are not doing
Joseph and Madam Perry.
Simon.
I think that the two colleagues have said substantially very important things. And I think that what I can touch are those gray areas that make people believe that in some countries it is total freedom, absolute freedom for political parties to do their activities 24/7 throughout the year and throughout whatever the period. I know for sure that for a country to be orderly, there has to be some observance of law and order. And this law and order is supposed to be also educated fairly and justly. And we hope that what the police is saying or claiming to say is right. And that's where the test is supposed to be. Otherwise, the political parties have their rights to do their duties. And also the police have the right to also do their duties in terms of law and order. And I've seen the contestations about guidelines, who is observing guidelines and who is not observing guidelines. And this is fundamental. One, are these guidelines issued to all the parties that are carrying out those activities in the countryside? If they are, then who is not observing these guidelines? Is it true that some parties like NUP are not? And if they're not, what are the specific things? And I was happy when you raised the issue of going to Kayunga, and they're suspected to be going to do other things other than what they're supposed to be doing. And then going to, of course, to Kamuli, the procession is supposed to start from Jinja and all the way to Kamuli, which is it's a very long stretch. And definitely that can be very disruptive. So I think we have to be fair here. Whereas we want police to be very fair, but also the political parties should conduct their businesses fairly and in observance of the laws. Because it's not enough to say, why is this party being allowed to do this? Why is the other party being allowed to do this? And we are the ones being targeted. And I think we need to isolate that. Are you being targeted falsely, or is there a reason? And that's what we should go for. And I'm happy that the police have been able to.
The first time does the same without
the whole thing is that the police headquarters has agreed to meet these people, and you can see how genuine the police is. Me, I find that's an act of genuineness. That yes, if you have an issue, we have written back and forth, but we don't seem to be agreeing. And this is now a door open for you, actually the gate, and the doors are open for you to come and engage in the discourse. And to me, that's a very fundamental thing. It's highly probable that the police are acting in good faith, because the suspicion is that they are not. But if they can say, okay, if we can't agree through the pen and paper, let's come and talk. Let's be talking. So I think that's a fundamental thing. I was looking at the laws of the West. Do parties just work throughout and unabated? The U.S. has issues permits or has permit requirements for public gatherings. You see, the Federal Election Commission regulates campaigns, financing, advertising. There are also restrictions on hate speech and incitement, blah, blah. UK, where my brother Joseph has been for a long time, there's Public Order Act of 1986 that regulates all these things, including processions, meetings, and so on. You have to work in a collaboration with the police to ensure that nothing wrong happens. And this list can go on.
The issue I've seen in the past, Honorable Mlongo, is each time these political parties actually write to the police never responds. That's on record. We have had them actually saying that. And in most cases, I will say maybe 80 and above %, it's always a no.
Well, as long as something is penned down and listed in black and white, that's fundamental. If you change your goalposts, then I can take you on, given the commitment you've given yourself. So to me, as long as they have done this, where in black and white we have the guidelines.
All right.
Now, then once you fulfill those guidelines, then you have every reason to challenge the police.
All right.
And I would like to see that.
What's your view on the guidelines? And because some people are actually saying they are restrictive, they do not allow this political party to carry out its activities. What's your view on the guidelines?
Well, to me, the guidelines do not necessarily stop them from carrying out activities. And we've seen actually NUP has done a number of activities before, but there are those where they have ended up being stopped. But there are also those other parties carrying out activities, I believe, in compliance, as long as you have informed, because one can do a procession when in full consonance with the police of that area. Now, for you, you're just looking at it as a procession, but yours is being stopped. So I think we need to have the boxes to be ticked against, so that we know whether this is being...
Because I was going to tell you, I can had a procession in Kitgum. We've seen Bessie had an open rally in Busia.
Exactly. But the thing is that have they followed? As long as they have worked in a collaboration with the territorial police of that area and have fulfilled all this requirement, the venue owners, blah, 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 that should be okay. But if you can request for a procession, even if you fulfill these conditions, but you want to do a procession from Natete all through Kampala to Nakawa, it will be stopped. It should not be accepted. And then you cannot cry foul when it's on your own making.
All right. Let's hear from Dr. Serunkuma. Your take on this.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to say that Museveni pretends to be a Democrat, and the people in the opposition take him seriously. I find that confusing. They take him seriously when the man is actually pretending, and they know he is pretending. So Museveni pretends to have a political party called the NRM. It's not a political party. The people in the opposition take him seriously, and they also form political parties, assuming they will challenge him on the basis of via the platform provided by a political party. So it's some sort of Museveni must be having a good laugh. I pretend, and they take me seriously. Museveni is an autocrat. Every person in the opposition agrees that Museveni is an autocrat. And then they want to mobilize that they are in London or the United States. Because if a man, you see, like the leading opposition political party wrote on a slogan, "We are removing a dictator," which meant we are removing an autocrat. How do autocracies behave? Autocrats don't roll your red carpet to go do whatever mobilization you want to do. They never do that. They will tear gas you, they'll beat you up, they'll throw you in jail, or they'll shoot at you. That's how autocracies behave. And I guarantee you the best people who know this are people in the opposition, because they've tested the wrath of this autocracy. They've been shot at, they are in jail, they've been denied access multiple times. What bothers me is every time this happens to them, they act shocked. It looks like a circus to me. We are dealing with an autocracy. We know how an autocracy is going to behave. But when it acts the way it should act, we act shocked. That bothers me. Right? So I see it as a circus. Perhaps the question I think they'll be asking, how do we mobilize under an autocracy? Because you see, pretending to do things, supposing this looks like politics in the UK or politics in the United States, pretending that you're going to act and perhaps go into a run with the autocrat is playing gallery politics, because we know this is an autocracy, and then you act like you're in the UK. You see, so you sit back and take lessons from where else people have been able to mobilize under fully fledged autocracies that pretend to be democrats. It's really bothering for me that every time we come back here, people in the opposition tell lengthy stories about how they've been denied spaces. But at the same time, they tell you, so it's an autocrat. It's contradictory. Because if you tell me that you're demanding for democratic space, when you know you're operating under an autocrat, it's counterproductive.
I've also had that notion about elections.
We need to take
They talk about how elections are going to be rigged and flawed, but they still take part in it.
It's confusing. I think there's anxiety of imagination. There's exhaustion of imagination. They're not being creative enough. And I think it's a circus, and I'll tell you why. But let me finish the earlier segment of my thought. I'm saying that they need to take lessons from where else people have been able to mobilize under an autocracy. The Muslim Brotherhood mobilized without having run-ins with the autocracy of Hosni Mubarak. And when a window opened, they overwhelmed the autocrat. The La Lucha movement in DRC mobilized under Kabila. They made sure he was unable to stand again. Kabila was so lethal that he banned some of the activists in their houses. You see, but they continued to mobilize. They would go and clean markets, work with the market women.
Which Kabila? Laurent or the
young
son,
man,
Joseph?
the son.
Joseph.
Because he wanted to stand for a third time, and the Congolese said, you're not going to stand again. But we need to take lessons. We need to sit down and imagine how do people mobilize under an autocracy. And there are lessons. There are plenty of lessons. And this takes a lot of work. And again, I have to say this, Mr. Lukwago. Our opposition is unlucky. Very unlucky that they are mobilizing under a time when 10 years ago we had the Arab uprisings, where all the autocrats of the time were taken out through street protests, through street mobilizations. Now, our autocrats in this part of the world, I think one of the experts, the few remaining ones, have taken lessons from elsewhere in the world. They were watching. And because they've taken lessons, they can't leave a small window for what happened in Tahrir Square or when a man set himself on fire in Tunis. They can't allow that to happen.
Because they have also taken lessons.
Yes.
Like you are telling the opposition to take lessons.
No, but you see, the opposition is not taking the lessons of how to mobilize under an autocrat because they are acting like they live under a democracy. And that bothers me. Of course, I know they'll try and say, what have you done? I've done nothing, but I'm saying diagnosing the problem is a core component of getting treatment.
All right. You had a second leg of that, your thoughts.
We need to fully diagnose our condition. Our condition, we live under an autocracy. How do you mobilize under an autocracy? You don't live under an autocracy and behave like you're under an autocracy. We are unlucky that the Arab uprisings happened, and this government has taken lessons. I can tell you, they would allow them to mobilize. You remember the first outings the NUP had? They would let them mobilize across the country, and they quickly struggled to find reason because political activity is very serious in Uganda. They could let them reach Uganda. You see, and right now, because they're mobilizing when the first son is not doing the same, because remember that time, the first son was going around throwing these mega parties, which very much looked like political rallies. Now they're doing it with the first son creating the pathway for them.
All right. Yes. Honorable Mlongo, I just want to comment because we're all exposed to the English language, the King's language, and we know the definitions of some of these terminologies. And when somebody over-defines something and nuances it to suit his own interest, it becomes something else. When a colleague says that this is an autocracy, he must substantiate it and moreover objectively and correctly.
People in the opposition said
and yes, but then you took it up to mean that is your framework, your conceptual framing of the idea, making it look like it's indeed an autocracy. An autocracy, you don't have certain freedoms that we enjoy here. You don't have a political party, opposition. You don't have such activities that happen like elections, where there is competitive electioneering. It can't happen. An autocracy is an autocracy. And we have some autocracies in the world. And if you look at a country...
I don't know how much time you have on this one.
Yes, but no, just a minute. I understand to mean that people should have known that this is an autocracy and therefore organize as such, and also go into see how the therapeutic measures we can take to cure this than actually just going to happen things as if it is UK, like you said yourself. So I think, to me, this country, yes, it may have certain tendencies that some people don't like, but I know that there is a degree of democracy that people enjoy. They compete for power in parliament. The NRM does not enjoy total absolute majority. They have opposition that's quite reasonable with certain numbers and so on. And as such, it cannot qualify to just be an autocracy.
All right. Let me come to you, Perry. I think that too, Dr. Serunkuma and Honorable Simon Mulongo, what they are largely talking about is the political environment under which we are operating. Could that be the issue, looking at what is happening?
You see, our aspirations as citizens are defined in the Constitution. And that's why my argument was based on what the law provides within the Constitution, which is our social contract with the leaders, and what the reality is. That's why I said that it's important for the police to issue these guidelines, but ensure that they are applied equally. Because if they don't, then the population starts wondering, why are you allowing processions in Kitgum and you're not allowing processions in Kamuli? Now, where I think Joseph earlier said that in the UK they would redirect. In all countries, by the way, they will want to maintain public order. But they will ensure that it is regulated so that it does not affect your right as a political actor. That's what they do.
So let's use the example of Ginger Road. All the way to Kamuli, all the way to Palisa.
I don't know where they started.
How would they redirect? They started from their party headquarters at Kavule, and they were moving to...
You see, unlike Uganda, I don't know whether there's another route. There's the Kayunga Road, actually.
That's the route they use today.
That's the route they use.
And that's where they stop.
Because what police is supposed to do is to ensure that they find a way. For instance, they can say, since your activity may disrupt the population, you will sit in the car and drive to Kamuli. At times, that's what they will do. When you reach Kamuli, then you organize.
They escort you to Kamuli.
No, even for most countries, because most citizens would abide by it, they may not even need to escort you, but they will ensure that along the way, their people know that this person is traveling to Kamuli, and these are the reasons why we are telling them not to be in the open air.
One of the most teething issues that came out in the interaction that we saw between the police as of yesterday and even today was the issue of the people who are following the vehicles that are carrying the NUP supporters. And the police were saying, you are not allowed to proceed with these people beyond this point. And the leaders of NUP were saying, we are not the ones telling these people to follow us.
Now, that's the
How do you manage that kind of situation?
No, that's the thing. That's why I was saying that it's hard to control people who will follow you, or even at times to predict how many people will come to your event. The thing is, you work on estimates. But if the police, for any other reason, thinks that, those people who are following you may cause a disruption, then at times they'll say, you know what, we will ask you to proceed faster so that you don't disrupt the other people who may also be enjoying.
All right. There's been an argument that has been put across that, look, if Honorable Chakulanya and his team have a rally in Kamuli, have a meeting in Palisa, why don't they sleep in Palisa and just wake up the following day to go to that venue where the meeting is, as opposed to moving from Kampala with what the police is calling a procession, disturbing the several people who are using the road, but also bringing to a standstill businesses that are in the major towns that are on this route. Would you subscribe to that thought? All this should find a better way to be at the venues than using a procession.
All these things are relative. I fought for return to multipartyism, and I don't know where Chagulanyi was at the time. But I want Chagulanyi to enjoy the absolute rights of democracy. But I also want Chagulanyi to respect the laws within reason. I continue to campaign for total maximum police funding to make sure that these guys are able to do their jobs. But they should do their jobs to ensure that they meet their commitments within the law as a law enforcement agency. That, as it may, if I am on my way to Nagongera and there are people who are excited because they've seen their son with the soil and they're following me, the police are absolutely within the rights and reasons to give me backup rather than to deny me and all those people their rights. That is what these guys are trained for. They're trained for, and that's what these guys are paid for. On the question of how much infringement on the rights of the citizenry, there is almost a blackmail nuances by NRA that every other time, they will disturb the peace of the citizenry, or businesses will be shut down. The other day I was just challenging the UBOS guys that they closed businesses for one day, allegedly to allow us to have a census. Turns out that we had it for 9 days and has now been extended by another 6 days, and that process was shambolic. But I'm delighted to say that today I was counted having intervened at the highest level. And so, if
you intervened to be counted,
yes.
You called for your own counting.
Yes, it's
after paying taxes for that.
That's correct, but there's a point I'm still making. And so I've sort of lost my thought on it. Look, the police are supposed to ensure that people who are following Chagulanyi follow the law. The burden of responsibility is with the police, not with Chagulanyi, because these are citizens of the Republic of Uganda. I have, as I said, organized many rallies, and I have participated in many big multi-million demonstrations. The burden does not go to the organizers. The burden remains with the police. The bottom line continuously, if you don't mind, just a moment, the bottom line continuously remains that the citizens of this country at one time, some shopkeepers along Kruma Road will know that for about an hour there will be a procession from here and they'll lose businesses. Losing business is not about losing businesses. Losing business is
that as you're enjoying your rights, you should not infringe on the rights of others. That's what even the police is saying.
Then Mr. Museveni infringes on that every day. You know how many times roads are closed for Mr. Museveni to pass?
He's the fountain of honor.
Fountain of honor, meaning what? Meaning what? Meaning what?
All right, let's hear from Dr. Sankuma.
I said at the beginning that Museveni pretends to be a Democrat and people in the opposition take him seriously. But I'm going to say Museveni pretends to be a Democrat and even my panel here takes him seriously.
This is my panel, not your panel.
Okay, my co-panelist here.
Yeah, your co-panelist.
Take him seriously. You're part of the opposition. Now I get it. You're part of the opposition. You take the man seriously.
It's my fault.
In response, I want to talk about modern autocracies. Because we have the classic autocracies and modern autocracies. And we have gone through these phases and non-scholars don't know the things. And I was surprised the ambassador here is trying to defend the thing as if he's on the inside. You're on Katebe.
No, he's actually telling you that there are certain things that are happening in Uganda that cannot happen under
let me talk about modern autocracy. Modern autocracies
setup.
Took lessons from the classic autocracies. Modern autocracies never suspend the constitutions because that will bring you the ire of the world. Modern autocracies work within the constitution so they can extend it as much as they want by a simple majority. Modern autocracies organize elections which they win. The modern autocrat doesn't just govern. He organizes an election. He doesn't govern by decree. He doesn't declare a life presidency. A modern autocrat organizes elections and they don't win by 99% and more. They are smarter. They win by 57. 51% is good enough to get them back to power. The modern autocrat has a thing that looks like a free press, but within the boundaries of what they can handle. A modern autocrat has a noisy and big parliament. Mubarak had a big parliament. The man who was just overthrown in Sudan had a big parliament. He organized elections. All these are autocrats. The autocrat of our time is not the Bokassa or the Idi Amin. He has a free press. He governs
relatively.
They reproduce themselves through the avenues provided by democracy. In fact, the modern autocrat is an embarrassment to democracy because there's a very famous interview Museveni gave to Al Jazeera. Talked to Al Jazeera. The journalist is called Muhammad Val. He was talking to Muhammad Val. And Muhammad Val puts a straight question to Mr. Museveni. And he says, won't you go down as an autocrat? He says, Museveni laughed and even showed his behind teeth. he said, an autocrat elected 5 times? But this is what the journalist didn't understand, that modern autocrats don't declare life presidency. But they keep reproducing this. What didn't understand? Is it Museveni or the journalist? The journalist didn't understand that. He didn't understand that he's dealing with a modern autocrat. He didn't know that he was dealing with a dictator of our president. He knows you don't shoot at people. No, you don't shoot at MPs. You bribe them by the institution called parliament. You just get the elite from the society, take them to parliament, overwhelm them with money. Mm-hmm. Put them at money point, not gunpoint. So what we're dealing with, as Kalun Sarmaga told us not too long ago, parliament is the bribe. You get all these wonderful MPs, once they enter the house, they're all ruined. They are soiled with money, and they can't even put, you see, this is why we have this mess, Political parties are all in shambles, and so we focus on a single political party. For example, we'll be discussing the NUP split between Mpuga and Bobi Wine, and then we're like, no, every party is like that. Because the modern autocrat has understood you don't shoot at people, you don't beat them, you don't do all these stupid things, you just overwhelm them with cash and they'll tear themselves apart. So what we're living with now is a modern autocrat. So what bothers me on the part of the opposition is that this is a simple thing to understand. It's very simple. But the expectation that this modern autocrat will roll them a red carpet and then as they go for their campaigns, I think is playing to the gallery. But I also understand that because they have been bribed through parliament, you see, people pride in the money that the Electoral Commission throws at them, to mobilize the political party. That's a bribe. Political parties are supposed to be organically self-sustaining. You see, through membership and doing business. If you lived under a democracy, this is why, credit to Dr. Milton Obote, Uganda House was a business to raise money to run the party, not to wait for handouts from the government that you're fighting. How does that handouts actually taxpayers' money? But it's a circus. Constitutional. By the way, you should also get this out of the way. There's very little taxpayers' money. We tend to say we hold public officers accountable because of the taxpayers' money. There's no taxpayers' money. These are bribes. All right. Spectrum Xtra on Radio 1 FM 90. Parliament to sell the country. Let's go for a break now. And when we return, we'll get the comments that are coming in from the listeners and we'll wind up the discussion on this matter and then switch our gears to the other topics. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Xtra continues after this break.
Spectrum Xtra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90. Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Xtra, review of the major events of the week. And you, listener, you've been actually sending in your messages using our WhatsApp line, which is 0703090090. So we'll sample some of the comments that have actually come in and the panel will respond. Radio 1, in my culture, there is a saying that if you ask a question that has an obvious answer, such as where is the private part of a goat located, you are driving for a laughter. In this country, who does not know that strong rallies for opposition parties such as NUP are unofficially banned? That's a comment from Pat there, who is listening to us. Then somebody is writing and says, why would a serving UPDF general be allowed to have processions from Kampala to Masaka and hold an assembly in Masaka, but a registered political party cannot be allowed to have one in Palisa? That's a comment from another listener who does not leave a name behind. Then we have another one, Spectrum Xtra, Godfrey Kalyesula in Lubatu Kitezi. The issue of the police barring no to hold rallies while allowing NRM people and General Mohozi to have theirs whenever they want has reminded me of something my lecturer used to say, that writers, when writing, are prophetically engulfed with special insight. Over 8 decades ago, George Orwell wrote, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Isn't this what we are seeing in our Uganda today? That's a question from Kalyesula there, likening what is happening here to that book which talks about the animal farm. Then another comment, the cowardice in the NRM is appalling. That pseudo-democracy should stop. Other than going to waste the trillions in elections, why not go the Eritrea way? How on other political parties supposed to mobilize? That's another comment there. Anthony Rice Senior says, good evening, Spectrum Xtra. I can see that Bobby Wine has no respect and regard on Uganda police or any uniform man in Uganda. He does not want to follow orders. We Ugandans have come a long way trying to build ourselves and our country to fit with others in the world. We don't need violence. Bobby Wine should first make a legacy name in his home than converting Ugandans to respect our force men and then and the son of our president. Who is Bobby Wine's father at the first place? Let that man at the studio stop calling our president an autocrat, because what he's saying is not right. That's a comment from Anthony there. Then we have another comment from Ben Candini, who says, good evening, Spectrum Extra. I think we should stop lying to the world about our dark democracy. PLOU can do anything in the center of the city, nothing happens, but nope, you see police tear gassing innocent civilians. Do the lawmakers see that? Where shall the future of Uganda fall? That's a comment from Ben there. Then we have another one. Henry Ryson says, what is good for Pilau is also good for Noop. Why should Pilau have a smooth procession ride, but Noop gets disruption on its way to its supporters? It's like the police is seeking validation for extra budget for riots. How sad. That's his comment there. Then we have a comment from Bob, who is listening in from here in Kampala, who says, the problem with Honorable Mlongo is following his heart, wishing that the NRM government has at least an ounce of democracy, which is not true. Democracy is a definable concept, and the NRM plus its members do not qualify. Well, those are the comments that we have so far. So let's conclude the discussion on this issue. Perry, do you have hope that after Monday meeting at 10 a.m. in the main boardroom of the police headquarters, probably we'll see Noop continuing with their activities?
I don't know, because for me, I always say that it's important to just see the laws being applied equally. That's why I say that in another part of the country, there's a party which is organizing. They actually had a procession on the street. So when you see, when the public sees that, then they start wondering, but why are you selectively applying the law?
And the comments from the listeners are reflective of
they are reflective of that. And you see, for me, I really hope the conversation would look at Uganda in the future, when many of us will not be here. Because you see, the seeds that we sow now will affect the younger generation. So even as we hold these discussions, let's not look at Uganda 2-3 years from now, but let us project what country will we leave behind for a generation. Many of them don't even know how democracy works. So I think our gift to the younger generation is just to attempt to try and work within, the principles, just minimally try and say, okay, we want to try and do things differently. And that's where I think the conversation would take us forward, because we have seen this on and on. The last election, no accountability for people who died. We are going into an election, so that also creates apathy. That's why when you speak to people, most people are like, we don't even feel like participating. And that, for me, is bad for a country where you claim you want to move towards a system where you can have representatives, that you can hold them accountable. The situation we're in should demand for conversations that, 20 years from now, what will our children be left with? Because many of the ones who are in power will not be here. But what legacy would they leave for the younger generation?
All right. Mr. Joseph Atieno, your closing remarks on this topic.
No, it will be just a quick summary that from the letter of the police, I noticed they talk about proof of permission from owners of vehicles to be used, that the tens of possibly hundreds of people who would be driving around a rally, coming to attend a UPC rally, in this case, an NUP rally, I will need to know them and list their vehicles, list the number of their vehicles. I think that is making things complicated, and I think the police is being very deliberate there to make it complicated for political parties and organizations to organize. I don't know which other country such a thing would happen, and certainly it wouldn't happen under a UPC administration. And number two, as I said earlier, and I just want to repeat this thing, that the idea that, open rallies should be confined to a particular season, is not a democracy. No wonder the question of whether or not we are under an autocracy is an open debate, And then finally, this thing that was suggested earlier, that seemingly the burden of responsibility for security, is redirected towards NUP, in others, the political party in question, that no, that's a policing thing, responsible to the police, law enforcement. My job is to say that I'm organizing a rally in Kashari as we're in Kashari, bearing Professor by a fantastic event there in Barara, and people are coming post the barrier, and that I don't know whether people are going to come from Kabale, others are going to come from Bujumbura, others will be coming from Kromsero, but they come. And when they come, when we expect the police to provide us with security and protection, and law enforcement with the resources that would have provided them to have sufficient intelligence to mitigate whatever is likely to come out of that.
All right. A comment comes in. There was a procession yesterday in Kampala City, people attired in KCCA Pilau vests. This was a long procession, just so you know. Then another comment, the police's duty is to regulate the holding of public gathering and ensure there is no breach of peace. For instance, organizers of a gathering intended to be held in a hospital military installation may be redirected to a different place. In all other cases, all the police needs to do is deploy its personnel to supervise a public meeting, guard against the same becoming violent. I only reject the notion that the police have supernatural powers to determine that a particular public gathering should not be allowed to happen because it will result into a breach of peace. Honorable Simon Mulongo, your closing remarks on this topic.
Yes, I think the arguments raised by some colleagues to the extent of redefining our democratic path to mean autocracy is something that actually requires re-evaluation, because the nuances that he attaches to it. I know that there is modern autocracy as opposed to the classical one, but also we know that in modern governance systems there are a lot of transitional trajectories that may pass through certain challenges that enable them to learn from those lessons and become something better. Because democracy is not just something we pick from Greece. It is something that must be organic to the norms and interests and aspirations of a given society. And as such, the definition cannot fit squarely to Uganda. And I want to challenge that, because Uganda does not necessarily get run by foreign powers. Uganda does not necessarily get run by monetized, because I know there's a lot of monies that exchange hands in there, and so is elsewhere. There's money. We know campaign monies that go around in the West, even if they say they put controls over them. But there are even cases in the courts where they challenge us how the monies were raised and how they were expended, and so on. So I think if we go by the strict definition of modern autocracy, which is a theory, it means you can never have any government that can escape it across the world. It's not there. Even the Vatican cannot escape it. So I think that, yes, I agree, but those are some theories that have no exact practical consequences in Uganda. Secondly, and finally, I want to appreciate the fact that, yes, police can provide security to the processions and so on, but I want to agree with Perry that it takes two to tango. You see, the rights of one cannot be prejudiced against the rights of the other. So you cannot say because you're enjoying your rights, even if your rights are injuring the other person. So we must have a balance of action. So in this case, I think, yes, we may blame the police, but the police have come out very categoric. They are giving us a black and white, their guidelines, and they believe that these guidelines have been offended, and that's why they took the action they did. I would like also to see our colleagues in other parties and all parties enjoy this freedom. They must be able, but we can enjoy that if we walk the talk, given the guidelines.
All right. Dr. Sarunkuma, your closing remarks on this topic?
Maybe Mr. Mlongo would feel better if he knows that there's even a third layer.
Apart from
I know there are like 11 layers.
You are mid-range. There's a superior layer of autocracy, which is like brain control. It's another layer.
Someone actually said you should stop referring to Uganda, the Ugandan leader, in that light. There's a comment that came in from the listener.
In line with the response from the police, I should tell you a bit more about a modern autocracy. It's technical. Politics is technocratized. They find, so these are the technicalities. Everything is coded.
Yeah. Even in having the rules.
The modern autocrat technocratizes people.
When was the last time you were
Simon. The last time was when God gave Moses the commandments
I need to
and they gave rules.
I need to finish my point. The modern autocrat is technical, so there will always be a technicality that the NUP people don't fulfill.
All right.
And they become.
And who doesn't?
All right. But also, Mr. Mlong, you need to beware. My critique is not for your president. My critique is
I know. If I feel I can even give you seven. Except that Uganda fits in 100%, and Mr. Museveni seems to be not fit 100%. It doesn't.
Moderator, can you please protect me against?
Well, Otieno is
my critique is against NUP that being
it's against the opposition.
Being aware of these realities,
and they continue to want to operate as a political party.
Like they are a Democrat.
All right. Gentlemen and ladies, let's move on. I'll begin with you, Joseph Otieno, on this one. The issue of the censure motion in Parliament. You know the issue. A group of MPs led by Theodore Sechkubo say they want to return integrity at Parliament and dignity, and they're saying their starting point is to deal with the commissioners who allegedly benefited from the 1.7 billion service award. Apparently, these commissioners sat determined what they should actually get. As we speak now, as of yesterday, sorry to say so, they had actually collected 30 signatures out of the 177 that are needed. But they also complained about intimidation. Being intimidated to go away from this process, but without stating who actually was doing the intimidation. And the question is, do you think there's a cause to celebrate here, but also do you think they will succeed with this campaign?
I don't know what it is to celebrate. 1.7 billion Ugandan shillings has gone down the shed, and that's the official amount that we know, and particularly on this one. We don't know how much others. But I also know that today I know people up country who are struggling in health facilities looking for 10,000 Uganda shillings, and they can't afford it. And these are people who have to leave government health facilities, most of which would have been built by UPC, to go to a private facility, 1 kilometer farther, but they can't afford 5,000 Uganda shillings. In this particular case, actually 10,000 Uganda shillings to cater for the livelihood of their children. And so, if you talk about 30 signatures and you call it good news, and then you'll understand what nuances of autocracy sometimes can mean. Look, this is a welcome move, and it's a move that I hope succeeds against the background, of course, of this intimidation. This is a move that must be supported, and this is a move that Perry, you and I, and everybody else listening should mobilize and organize, and should contact our respective legislators, and demand.
Joseph is trying to be contagious.
Demand that they should join. They should join in the lobbying and campaigns to push the legislators to be signatories to that, and that legislators who do not participate in this sell out against the people, because this was theft of public resources. In any case, we are not going to expect Mr. Museveni to do anything on this. These guys should have been sacked a long time ago, just like questions that arise with some of the senior, including my good, beautiful sister Anita and others, when it comes to some of the incidents that have taken place in the Legislative Assembly, let alone some of the ministers around NRA. They should not be sitting, around cabinet tables, continue to enjoy the privileges of our monies. Fantastic move by Sechkubo and co. Sarah is my fantastic sister from Tororo, a fantastic legislator on this occasion, sharp on point. I would like to see more Sarahs, and the sooner that happens, the more I hope we're able to get 200 signatures at close of this, and then we're going to push to make sure this case absolutely censured. Time is naive for people to begin waking up to the reality that this is a struggling, developing economy, and that the National Assembly is there to represent people rather than a source for making dubious cash.
Perry, your thoughts on this?
I think for me this question should go back to the voter, because we are soon having elections. And you see, this is not the only scandal that has befallen Parliament. There are a number of incidences where money has been exchanged either to pass legislation, and I really wish more of that information was public, because at the end of the day, the MPs are supposed.
That is set up objectively, that involves both sides of the IO so that they can do the investigations. Thorough one, because parliaments have limitations. Even if this team did the investigation, they have limitations. They may not have access to records in Bank of Uganda or Ministry of Finance. They may cause somebody to come under account. They may not provide every detail in good faith and so on. So for that matter, I think this is a whistleblowing act, and this committee should be supported, and perhaps government should take a cue from this and then institute a proper commission of inquiry, and we must go to the bottom of it.
Let's hear from Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma.
Thank you. I gotta say again that Museveni pretends to be running a democracy, and people in the opposition believe him. And when they believe him, they want to make us in the public to believe them as well. Unlike Joseph here, I think Sechko is involved in a circus. A circus which is persuaded to where he looks to be playing opposition. Opposition is the game. I don't think he means what he's doing. He knows this is a useless exercise. They are pandering to the work of the activists. You know, this is the work of Jimmy Spice and Tango, Agatha Tyree, Godwin Toko, Agora Discourses. They're pandering to this work and playing politics.
To the gallery.
I want to tell you why I think it's a circus, because Parliament is the bribe.
What does that imply, by the way?
What that means, this is I'm reading from Kalundi Sarmaga, that and Kalundi was very nice to us because he gave us the history of this thing called Parliament. That when Sir Andrew Cohen realized that there were real grievances in the population, people were actually agitating for real democracy, he found a way of sucking them into the legico to give them the comforts of modernity and disengage them from the general public. And that model has not gone away. So the people in that house, all of them, Mr. Mlong here knows because he's been there, all of them are dirty in some way or another. We heard about the 40 million. Well before, you remember Tohaka returned 40 million and they left him for the dead. When the Parliament exhibition was ongoing, we had 100 million being dispersed. We have a man, one of the MPs, who forgot 100 million in his car at a Mercedes, at a washing bay. We've had another 100. Money in that house is shared in sacks. If you are clean, the people who are clean are either dead or not in that parliament. The honorable MPs who are clean are either dead or not in that parliament. Now that you're not in there, maybe Mr. Mlongin that we can say you're clean. That parliament is the dirtying and confusing house. And every time I think about it, I remember the beautiful soul of MP Twaha Kagabo, who is now a confused man. Twaha Kagabo goes to parliament, convinced he's there to serve his people, and then he realizes money is being circulated, shared. He gets 40 million. He doesn't know how he got it. So his party tells him to return this money. Only him returned this money. And as he returned this money, he realized, we were just playing. My party was joking. I didn't have to return this money. He had to go and kneel down to beg to be forgiven for returning the money.
Yeah.
You see, because everybody from either side of the aisle are content to eat their money. So Parliament is the dirty place. I've always wondered, why do seemingly clean people, seemingly well-meaning Ugandans, once they get into that house, all of them, all of a sudden, start speaking in tongues? You need to understand that Parliament...
Because it's a system in tongues.
Parliament is the bribe. It is a dirty house. So whoever is in that house is dirty. Now they realize Puga's goods is cooked. Let's cook him further. You see, let's appear to be playing politics. That's point number one. Point number two, I need to persuade my co-panelists here, and I think you're really listening, Ugandan, that the money in Parliament, the money being shared, the money going on into Amongo's account are peanuts compared to what is being stolen in that house. Mm-hmm. If Parliament is the bribe, what are they selling? Who is bribing and what are they buying? Mm-hmm. And I have an explanation for that. That Parliament legislates
for what is bought. They are selling the country. And the Katale Komulo is at Parliament Avenue. They are selling the country. And I'll tell you why. Give you examples. I'll give you examples very quickly. So last year, 2023, in our coffee, we made 3.5 trillion out of our coffee. Daily Monitor did a story maybe a week ago where the big players who sold our coffee were foreigners. They take 70% of that money, negotiate at Parliament. Really?
And the other place.
So let me give you another example. The Auditor General, Joseph Mwanga, told us.
Parliament legislates. It never makes those kinds of
legislation. Do you know that Uganda Bankers Association is in the Uganda Bankers Act?
You made that argument here.
Yeah, because you see, how did those people get? Let me give you another example. How the money that is circulating in Parliament, being shared among the MPs, is very small compared to what they get, what they let go to get those small monies. You know, all those facts. Joseph Mwanga, the Auditor General, wrote a report to the Katonto Committee and showed him that Mr. Mtebile, when he was Governor Bank of Uganda, closed all local banks from 1994 to 2016 when they closed Crane Bank without sitting anywhere beside any minutes. So all local banks were closed and the market was left for foreign banks. The foreign banks, every single day.
What I'm getting from
let me finish this point. I'm going to take you to how that's the dealer's house. So what happens is that the banks in Uganda make an average of 800 million every single day. And in this economy called Uganda, they are the only ones thriving because all the other businesses are dead. 60 so-called big businesses in this country filed for bailout from Mr. Museveni. They are dead. So you wonder, these banks which are making 800 million every single day, with whom are they trading? It's because those people negotiated, legislated, and gave them monopoly over all the sweat of Ugandans. So as long as you're involved in work, your sweat is taken out of this country by the bankers. All right. You know, I won't be finished. I haven't taken so much time. Let me finish. Are you aware?
You can make a point.
We need to go for a break now. Spectrum Extra will continue after these messages as we move on to our next topic.
But I just wanted to say something.
Let's go for a break now. When we return.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90. Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
It's Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. Review the major events of the week. We began with looking at the standoff between the NUP and the police, and the panel concluded that we wait and see what will happen on Monday when they have a meeting there. But the most important thing is actually for the law to actually be implemented without any bias. So we'll be waiting for the outcome of that meeting. But now we are looking at the planned censure motion in Parliament against commissioners of Parliament over what is called service award. We have basically heard from the entire panel. Only Honorable Mlongo wanted to respond to some issues which were raised by Dr. Sarankuma very quickly before we actually move.
Yes, I just which was about to conclude, that he's overstretching his definition of autocracy to make it so fluid that every system and governance in the world will be autocratic. But I know that if we go that route, then we may never define things correctly. Because if you define sin to include even smiling and all that, then means even this poor smile in good faith are sinners. We should not take that route.
Not everybody who smiles, but smiling in good faith is not. But people can smile in sin.
Yes. If they smile in sin, it's actually sinful. But
so my argument then for
I've
also heard there is some smiling called sheepishly, something like that.
Well, you can call that, and don't be sexist because we have a lady here.
No.
Now, let's go back to the issue of Parliament. The whole entire membership of Parliament being dirty, and I want to say that yes. Just like proverbial or biblical Abraham and Lot, when God asked him, and he was asking God, if there is only one, can you spare them? It started from 30 and going downwards. There is no, you can say that the entire Parliament of over 500 members, each one of them, including the officers, staff, and all this, are dirty. And I don't think so, because yes, there are many people who could be involved, who could have dirtied their hands in one way or the other, but we can't say all of them. And I can tell you, if you got people here, they will tell you that they're not dirty. I was in the parliament. I was never dirty. I never did any mischievous things. I never did that. And we're very strict in what we're doing, that actually we came to get a pat on our backs, because nobody can ever say someone was corrupt on this case. I never. And on rules committee to which I was sitting, I handled people very firmly.
But that's why Yusuf is suggesting that you must be cleaned.
Yeah, well, but he was not saying it in
what Yusuf it was political philosophy, and it was deep. And
he wasn't saying it straightly. He was saying it in a manner that was insinuating something, and I didn't want him to get out with it, because not everybody can. Like, you can say that all these people are bad. You can't say people cannot all be bad.
No, I
think let me just that's an exaggerated assessment.
My critique is not against the individual people.
Yes, you said that everybody.
The house.
In the house.
No, the house is talking about the house.
Yes, it's not buildings. Well, the house is made of people. It's made of people and individual members who are honorable members elected. Some of them want to be having dubious dealings. I have not.
But when we say Parliament is corrupt, I am the Englishman here. When they say Parliament is corrupt, it does not mean
Doraman from Tororo.
I mean English in terms of contextual language. As a some relative authority. No. Parliament.
I'm not about to ask you how much you sword in English.
That's correct.
When you say Parliament
is corrupt, does not mean everybody is corrupt.
Whole Parliament, everybody, he even used the words, everybody in that house is corrupt.
Yusuf Aifa.
No, because he cannot substantiate that.
I think at this point
there must be some people who are clean, people who are well intended, and who are not involved in certain malpractices. All right,
Perry wants to jump in.
Let's hear from them, and the clean ones are dead. Let's hear from them. You cannot substantiate that. People who are dead are not necessarily clean. There are dead people who are not clean, and there are living people who are not clean. So you can't just say that all dead people are the ones who are clean. Why did you absolve them? Because they're dead. Let's move on. Look at that rule.
Debate to the citizens, because ultimately they are supposed to be our
I think some people are going to rush to die to be clean.
Clarify.
Yeah.
Very quickly. You can't clarify when you have everybody. He's like, you can't be clean either.
He's so agitated. I don't know what is happening with him.
Well, I'm not agitated, but
I will say,
as a former officer of the House, I'm furious that you can't generalize everybody.
The argument I'm making is historical. It's not very specific to this current. I'm just saying the model.
Then you not qualify.
Let me. The model that was set in place by Sir Andrew Cohen is still working, because the question we tend to ask ourselves.
So it's a structure problem.
It's embedded in the structure, and ever since the colonizers came back, and the House retained its model with Mr. Museveni as the quintessential colonial emissary.
That's the very thing.
You gotta listen to this. This argument is historical. We said Andrew Cohen realized there were people within the population in the Bataka movement who are agitating for actual access to the economy, and
he bribed them.
He realized he didn't bribe them. He brought them to the dining table, overwhelmed them with cash.
But you see, that's not the case in all countries. I know some. In most countries, we actually have parliaments. If it's a structural problem, then you need actually to suggest how we deal with it.
That was a reference.
Perry's suggestion is that we should leave the issue to the voters to actually decide.
We can give them the right information.
Yeah, but what you're saying is
what has happened. We need another person.
And I wanted to give you some receipts on what I'm saying. How the House is very corrupting. If you generally speak to MPs away from the microphone, just one-on-one, they'll tell you, we're all picking this money. They're honest about it. Mr. Mlong, you may not be, but your colleagues are honest about it. I don't want to name names, but also when you challenge me that I need to ask them, they will say they are clean. You're asking a monkey to judge a forest. you think they are dumb to come and
substantiate.
They won't come up to the public and say, we are corrupt.
All right, let's move on. And I'll begin with you, Mr. Joseph Ocheno, on this issue of Kenya becoming a honorary ally of NATO. How significant is this? What do you read in it from the likely dynamics in the region? Very quickly, as we come towards the end of this.
Interestingly, the headlines were excitement, but I think this is counter-Pan-Africanism. I want to repeat, this is counter-Pan-Africanism. If it is the case that now we are moving away from towards East African integration, if from East African integration we're going to an African one government of Africa, hopefully, and if beyond that we're going to go for a Pan-Africanist state in which African citizens in Brazil and Haiti feel part of us, and then we, at the same time, one of us is seeking some kind of special membership to NATO, an organization which is basically the military wing of global imperialism, then I find it rather contradictory. So it's shocking that really this is a matter that people seem to miss. But that said, it's not surprising. It's not new. Kenya has always been the base for the U.S. In the peace time of the Cold War. Kenya was always Kenya. Mobutu, Zaire, and Malawi were the milder friends of African liberation movement, so it's not particularly surprising. But that said, I think it's in the interest of the U.S. to try and look for new friends, considering the manner in which the NATO alliance has received a shocking beating from the battle between NATO and Russia, and how Africans seem to have asserted themselves. So President Ruto's new dealings and darlings in Washington is completely contradictory to what the more recent tone from African governments, from the Museveni's friends in military Sahel to Southern Africa, including the tones of the other Democrats like Thabo Mbeki and others. So rather, what is it? Who's the new president these days? My good old friend Cyril Ramaphosa, who was a darling of mine. Because they've had so many changes while Museveni remained a constant, So when he was Secretary General of the ANC, sorry,
a constant, and how did you constant?
Look, so really, from Kenya's perspective, you could say that Ruto has done rather well. He's been very well received in America, but I think it's a sellout of the African cause to NATO, so nothing to celebrate.
All right, let's hear from Honorable Mlongo. Your take on this? Any significance?
Yes, the significance is only to America more than anything else. The Americans are trying to create a footprint for themselves to be able to have a longer reach against.
Create?
Yes, they're creating.
Doesn't it exist already?
Well, no, because the level at which they were collaborating was at trade, defense pacts, and security pacts that were actually in generalities. But when you cause somebody to be an ally of the NATO, it means that ally has greater access, for example, to arsenals of a certain degree of sophistication, and that you have also to bring on board bases and personnel of the Americans on the ground. And most of these people, when they come there, they actually do nothing but reduce your sovereignty, because then even your foreign policy discourses are supposed to be affected by that. He cannot, for example, champion anything other than what is in the interest of the U.S. If he does so, he will be brought to order. And I was wondering why his initial activities against the dollar and against moving to capital in the West and so on, and now he's humbled. He did not even go to the Africa-Russia summit and so on. Now you can see the baby is really being born, and we're able to see it come out with a clear sex, and not this trans-sex issue. No, it's now very categorical. It's either boy or girl. And so for that matter, yes. And then of course there are consequences. I don't agree with Joseph that there are consequences to the federation process, because then we're having a number of competitions that are going to arise, whether it is defense competitions, people are going to try to match and catch up, because no state in the region is going to rest until they are able to defend themselves.
Are you talking about an arms race?
Yes, an arms race, yes, particularly. And that it's going to be, nobody can allow them to grow and outgrow others.
So there's a likelihood Russia is likely to come
definitely,
in. And also to look for its friends.
Yes, it's going to make sure that China is going to look for ways and means of coming in.
And Kenya's own neighbors.
Yes, and then of course Russia will do this, and other powers. So for that matter, it's going to create unnecessary competition amongst ourselves. So yes, but of course, on the other hand, we welcome Kenya to be a powerful partner and brother. If they can have bolstered the economic muscle with 250 million, they just clinched a deal. That's a good thing. But the consequences are more serious that are negative than positive.
Perry, you're reading.
But you see, as we talk about here, Pan-Africanism, Egypt became part of that club in 1989.
And most of the
Tunisia, Morocco, they are part of the pact. Even Arab countries like Jordan, Qatar, they are all part of the pact. The world is about interests. That's the bottom line, and we know what has happened in West Africa. So the Russia, China, it's about interest. So they are lying. Kenya is lying because there are trade interests involved. There are issues of military training, because America does a lot of information gathering. And for Kenya, one of the things I was reading is that actually, if you notice, the attacks by Al-Shabaab have actually reduced because they have information firsthand, because the Americans have a base there. So the world is about interests. The thing is, in those interests, how do your people benefit? No, it's not. Even us. The thing is, even us as Uganda,
do you think
our interests?
Do you think this could be a signal to Kampala? There was a plan by the US to actually have a base here, and Kampala said no. There was that plan, and some people have been saying,
but Kampala has been a political base.
Kampala has been a darling of the US, and some people are actually saying that probably this is a signal to Kampala that Kenya is now taking over.
No, the thing is, it's the opportunity found Kenya already. They have moved. The world moves on. That's the reality. For me, this whole conversation is how do the citizens benefit from these different interests? That for me is my bottom line. Because if Kenya is able to gain through trade, the thinking is that maybe the welfare of the citizens will be improved, because we can't deny that the world is about
Which
interest.
Which country has benefited in Africa from trade with America?
You look at, of course, Kenya is much better than us. They are the biggest economy in Africa. Even before this, most of their trade, they are in terms of export, they are third.
Because of America.
No, but
give us numbers.
No, even AGOA, they are the ones who have preferential trade, and I'm saying the world is about interest. You can't run away from it. So even Uganda must be having.
But not selling your soul.
No, who says they are selling their soul? Even us, we must be having alliances. That's the reality of the world.
Selling your military interests to external power, and they control it.
Well, Honorable Mlongo, you were in AMISOM in Somalia, and as Uganda, we deployed our soldiers there. And some people have also been saying we sold our soul.
Exactly, and most of the money
went to Somalia to help stabilize, and we did a lot. There's a government running there, which was not there before. Our flights are going to Somalia, which was not there before. So we did not sell our soul.
Why do you think Kenya is selling its soul?
They're doing so for some.
Well, for their strategic reasons.
I think for modern autocratic reasons.
Can I just say that I criticized Uganda for the Somali thing, and you're right that Uganda sold its soul. But the extent to which Kenya is going as a formal alliance with NATO is a step farther than where Uganda actually went. Uganda played the Quisling thing, but no, the alliance with NATO as a formality has got huge global ideological.
Uganda put bodies on the line.
That's what I'm trying to say, and I was extremely concerned. That's what I'm trying to say. But how far can you realize that
just cause
the implications for NATO, as allying with an independent African country, in which case is a neighbor to Uganda, which is basically, my home is just a few miles away from there, and the East African member state as such, I'm absolutely critical about it.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Serukuma. Your reading of this, is it global politics coming to our door? Is it a signal to Kampala, you're no longer the darling? Is it Kenya making its strategic interest known to the world?
And I think Perry has said it many, many times, that it's about interests. She just didn't break it down. It's about economic interests.
Well, take us there.
there's panic in the United States right now because they're being kicked in the butt for most of West Africa. There's a base in Niger, which is now occupied by both Russian and American forces.
They've actually been told to leave in September.
So there is panic right now within themselves. So they
who is having the upper hand there? Is it the government of Niger or is the Russians who are pushing up the Americans?
The struggle for the soul of Africa continues. The struggle for the soul of Africa, which means having control of our resources, continues. And it's reproduced in various ways. If you saw coups in West Africa, they were not really opposed to democracy, but they are trying to find the soul. How do we benefit from our resources? Because we remain a colonized continent. DRC is still in shambles. A coup led by an American almost happened in DRC, and all because, Dan Gatla, the biggest the Israeli con, who is stealing Congolese resources, is being asked to leave. He's being asked to leave DRC. He controls 90% of the gold mines given to him, the older Kabila, because he gave him weapons against the old government to buttress himself in power. So he's being asked to leave, and so a coup almost happened led by an Israeli-American citizen, right? So the struggle for the soul of the African continent continues. And as it continues, because those countries are so poor, Europe and North America are very poor countries. 70% of what they eat comes from Africa and Latin America. So and they come from this continent cheaply, so that they can benefit from.
Sometimes freely.
Not freely, they steal those things.
Well, meaning.
Well, it's theft. When you say free, it's like we give it to them. But they are
people without food?
Western Europe and North America, they're very poor. They don't grow anything.
Let's allow him to concretize his thoughts.
The figures show 70% of what they eat comes from elsewhere.
So what do you think could be going on?
So what is going on right now is the United States trying to buttress itself. Buttress itself in the region. So you sign a NATO agreement with the biggest economy on the East African coast. One of the biggest, I think Tanzania is bigger, just it's not noisy. So you buttress yourself so that you have the entirety of the East African region. You have a colonial emissary in Kampala. You have a friendly force in downtown Kigali. You have a wonderful, stronger union. They're not very noisy. They are calmer in Tanzania. So you buttress yourself in the noise. So that, as the Turkish and Russian influence continues to come down, you're stronger. You can signal to things that this is a NATO ally. Once attacked, we can move in, because you never know what happens. There could be a coup here, because I've often encouraged our first son that if he actually wants to have a piece of the presidency, he's going to wait forever. So if he can coup his dad, he stands a chance. I'm telling you. And you see, because if he could his father, he would look like a man by himself, and Uganda might welcome him.
And a few other people might actually clap for him.
I welcome him too, because he would have showed that he's a man by himself. On his own. Being babysat to the
You're promoting treason.
It's ridiculous. No, I'm encouraging the first.
That's not allowed.
And by the way, right now, as you look across the
that's not allowed.
When you look across the continent, it's constitutionally protected. In fact, the Astral constitutional lawyer at Macquarie University, Professor
will accuse us of conspiring against the elected president of the Republic.
Professor Kavumba wrote a piece in the
controversial elected Mr. Museveni, yes.
The wonderful professor of law at the School of Law, Macquarie University, Businje Kavumba, wrote a piece where he argued that if Museveni could his father, rather if Muhoozi could his father,
he would become very popular.
The law would argue that he did that to protect the constitution.
Well,
because it's legally protected. But let me finish the point about
Dr. Kabumba alone.
It's documented, and that's
Please give him a chance, because he hadn't developed his point yet.
Yes, let's conclude. When you come to what we're witnessing right now with America signing a pact, if anything of that sort happened in this region, then they could invoke the alliance, which is the pact says if
we want to protect our ally.
But all in all, they are protecting their access to this East African enclave. Not for our benefit. I can't imagine. Did you guys see the very ridiculous picture? It's unbelievable. of Mr. William Ruto trying to sit in the presidential chair of Joe Biden, the presidential office, as the Joe Biden standing over here.
They're friends.
It's so ridiculous. Looks like the presidential day when school children visit the White House and they're given to sit in the chair.
Barack,
You couldn't miss that image on William Ruto. He's like a child, and I remember writing in the Pan-African Review.
Introduce him to that because of that.
Did you see the picture?
No, but
it's a crisis. We have a crisis of confidence amongst our leaders.
Well, he was welcomed in the Oval Office, and he had to have a feel of it.
Because
like in the village,
proof that he has arrived. Yeah.
Like in the village, you leave your bed to the guest.
This is a rivalism. We still we're dealing with in this country. Is malo of our leaders. They are content with small things.
What would you do if your guest tells you
their dreams are small,
have a seat?
They are content with small things,
and they're showing you where to sit.
It's ridiculous. You think Idi Amin would take such a gamble, or
would they allow Idi Amin to sit in it?
But those were men.
No, the first few weeks they would allow him. Don't forget, they brought Idi Amin. Idi Amin had tea with the Queen. Was the most privileged African ruler at the time.
Joseph, I was going to say that there are so many ways of killing a rat. You entice it. You could hit it. You could trap it with some food. You make it look very loud. This is what they are doing. America is, as Perry said plenty of times, it's after their interests.
Always.
Let me tell you, every single dollar they give to us, they take 24 by other means. They take 24.
Yeah.
They have a stupid thing called trade misinvoicing, which is legally protected. That they deliberately misinvoice, and it's still our resources. 24 is taken out.
Africans should wake up, man.
Every time they give us one.
Has made his point now.
All right. As we come to the end of this show, let's sum up our thoughts, and I begin with you, Mr. Joseph Ochieno.
No, I think Africans should wake up. Ugandans should wake up, and Uganda should listen to these eminent panel opinion and views and opinions on everything that we've discussed today. But on the concluding bit on generally this US-Kenya thing, it's actually shameful. I'm actually quite surprised that the East African community is quiet. I'm just wondering what Milton Obote, Julius Nyerere, and Kwame Nkrumah would be saying in heaven, and indeed Patrice Lumumba.
There was that thing called Cold War, and they also had where they used to ally.
No, the formation of the Organization for African Unity, the push for African liberation and independence, were completely, clearly one in which, if Ruto ever understood, and if on average most of your listeners did, you will appreciate why these independence leaders, founding parents, would be extremely sick in heaven, imagining that now, instead of seeking to consolidate our African unity, we are seeking to become special stooges through NATO of America.
Honorable Blongo, the other day President Yoweri Museveni was in Nairobi, and with Ruto, they were actually talking about the need to move faster to the political federation as a very important issue, even in terms of strategic security, transformation, economic transformation, but also what they called undugu, ubuntu. You know, we all in the same region almost share similarities here and there. Where does this put the East African Federation when we have this kind of dynamics taking place? They are suggesting that the EAC Secretariat should be protesting.
No, I don't.
And students in the university should come to the streets.
AU protest.
Yes.
So the new AU is a sick AU.
Let's listen to him.
Because Perry and Joseph are hijacking. That is a modern autocracy, and we should have.
They have not demanded for any ransom.
The issue is.
They have not threatened you.
No ransom, in fact. You have not even demanded for ransom.
The alliance with NATO, which is symbolic, but has inside it some nuances that are serious. There is no way Kenya can play ball on foreign policy issues without aligning them with the US.
Okay.
And if the US does not want a strong federated government in East Africa, they'll definitely kill it. Or they will make it, like we say in Somalia, wanting a situation of no war and no peace. So you just mark time there. They could actually make it no federation and no disintegration. So we're just there marking time. And I fear that it may affect us.
Very quickly, Perry,
because of
your closing remarks as we come to the end of the show.
To us from outside, superpowers.
Very quickly.
No,
they want the war to end.
It's just for us to keep reflecting on this country, because we are going to live at one point. I mean, many of us are in our 40s, some in their 60s. What kind of country do you want to live for these children?
All right.
Exactly.
I'm afraid time is not our best ally. We have to bring this discussion to an end. I might thank you, my dear panelists, for actually making time to be with us here this evening. Thank you very much. Also, I must thank the listeners who contributed to this discussion. I've been your host, Kenneth Lukwago Anderson, and from me and the entire crew here in studio, we wish you a very good weekend.
Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. An extra hour of analysis and discussion of the topical issues of the week.